When we change to hitting upwards, we just do what we did with the previous postures. We move from a single context, so 100% close, into a combined context, 50% close, 50% rise. And so even though you would think this is just a minor change in the points that you're targeting with the strike, actually it changes how the whole posture is stacked. So this is a good opportunity to think again about Wang Xiangjai's idea of intuitive Taolu. Because even though the postures themselves are the product of training utilising culture, i.e. the quintessence principles of Wushu, those postures are not the product of human design in the way that, for example, a tiger form posture is deliberately mimicking the movement of a tiger. In fact, that element of deliberation shouldn't even be there, so you can understand what Wang Xiangjai is talking about. You shouldn't be thinking about the form of a posture, the actual technique of a posture. In the moment, you should just find yourself hitting the target. And completely intuitively, although it's trained intuition, in that very moment you find yourself forming the exact perfect posture as far as your cultivation allows, that maximizes the quintessence principles of Wushu, the laws of physics and your own physiology. Intent leads the whole body to form itself into a shape. And for Wang Xiangjai, that's the true meaning of Taolu, which we normally interpret as a sequence of movements, i.e. a form. For Wang Xiangjai, intuition has its own Taolu, and this is Yiquan. So, in this posture, we're using 50% close, 50% rise. One of the things that close does is it narrows the posture and makes it a little bit more imbalanced. But we've taken an element of that out. Remember in the previous posture, we had to use that little sliding set. It widened the posture and also brought the rear arm closer to the centre line. But as our posture is now only 50% close, it's not as narrow, so it doesn't need that extra bit of space to balance. And also the direction of the posture has changed. It's now 50% rise, so we don't need that little step out to the side. That's partly accounted for by not closing as much, but we're also going to put it somewhere else. We're going to put it in the upwards direction rather than the outwards direction. And to do that, we're going to push up off the front foot, and that's going to get some extra spring into the posture. And because the pivot root isn't turning in as much, that's also going to lift up a little bit. And you can see here how much the posture closes. See, it's like much more close when you use the lateral strike. You can see what it means when we say 50% of the close has gone from the movement. And you can see here how that movement is put back in with rise. So it's pushing up from the pivot root, but as well as that, the right hip is pushing the quad up as well. So all of that is lifting the whole structure upwards in line with the hit. And it does feel a little bit like the quad is opening at first, but as the hit comes in, the hip turns in, and it's definitely close combined with rise. The funny face isn't mandatory, it doesn't really help, but it helps me, that's why I do it. So remember that the front leg is also lifting up, so that's an explosive movement up on the front leg, up on the pivot root at the back, and it just sends all the energy pushing straight upwards. Then as the hit comes in, you just contextualise it with close, so it's a bit of a phased movement, the rise into the close. And then next, notice the shoulders. So we want to add a little bit of volume into the shoulders, particularly if we want to take movement away from the hips. So a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a shimmy again, but it's not a shimmy on a flat plane, it's a shimmy on an angle. You can see that it just shimmies down and up, and you get a little bit of a circle up with the arm. And again, if you lift your arm, your shoulder has to come up, so it always looks a little bit like the shoulder is hunched up. But if you lift your arm like that, and you've actually got a muscle there, it will look a little bit like the shoulder comes forward. In fact, Yao Zongzun says you have to do that anyway. It's biologically inevitable because you're lifting your arms, but it should come forward just to protect that side of the head a little bit. Anyway, look closer at the shoulders and see they shouldn't be flat, so not a flat like that. You've got to drop, see the dip into it that adds extra volume into the posture, and it adds extra momentum, extra spiral. Not like that. Drop it, swing it up like that. And it's the same whichever way you do it, just change how you stack the posture, that's all. And that's second to the top of the spiral, and then just notice the head. So the head moving to the side because that's the top, the end point of the spiral. And so you start off with the movement relatively big, you practice it slow and big, and then you just try and finesse it, try and make it smaller, put more of the articulation into the whole body structure, and try and get the same amount of power for a more compact movement. And now that your level's getting higher, you can start to experiment. You can use the open into the close, and then you can start thinking about, well, how do I transfer that into the upper body, into the shoulder movement? And it's just a matter of experimentation. Proceed via intuition, try different things. Sometimes a bit of saturation, just do it loads and loads of times. Other times just break it down, work on simple exercises, and just begin to think with your body, how do I change that movement to a different point? And the more you do that, the better you become at this. And then when we change to hitting downwards, it's much more straightforward than when we did it with the lead hand. It's now just 50% close, 50% sink. The only minor detail is that you need to lift your weight a little bit so that you can drop it down more effectively into the compression set. And as you do that, the posture skews forwards, and then both heels actually slam down into the floor like they're going to try and crack a stone. And recall that when we did this posture with the lead hand, it was the lead foot that did that dramatic lift up and crack down with the heel. But because we've reversed the posture, now it's going to be the rear heel that does that most dramatically. But we slam our whole body down into the floor to maximise the compression set. What Wang Shangjai calls rebound energy, but it doesn't really rebound. Everything just happens at the same time if you understand the physics of it. Next, let's add in that little bit of open so that we create a spiral movement, and this is going to add in power. And because the posture is quite finely balanced, it can quite easily unbalance you. I mean, hitting something would help stabilise you, but it might also just as easily make you highly vulnerable. Okay, so all of these postures we've looked at so far, lead hand and rear hand, they've all just been variations on a theme. They're all virtually the same technique. And also there are variations that we haven't even looked at yet, combinations and using steps, for example. And the only thing that changes is the point that we want to hit. And because that changes, then the way that we stack the posture changes as well. And although you can see how traditional wushu flows out of this, these are not human-made postures in the way that traditional wushu is. They are momentary crystallizations of intent based around the laws of physics, physiology, and the quintessence principles of wushu. And in Yiquan, this is what we mean by intuitive Taolu. There's no fixed method, but that doesn't mean that there's no method. The method just isn't fixed by us. It's just momentarily expressed by us.